Hello.
Where are you?
I'm just out. Why, what's up?
Because we're supposed to be filming a video today.
Oh, with that today. Sorry, bud, I'm not going to make it.
Well, what happened to all that? We need to do videos, we need to get on it, we need to do the next thing.
Look, I'm sorry, I've just got other things going on right now. And I kind of need to do these because I need to expand as a person. I'm sure you can get by without me, right?
Right, listen, if you think that you're too good for me now, that's fine. I can do this by myself.
Whoa, where's all this coming from? I'm sensing a lot of anger and negative emotions. I think you just need to cool down a little bit.
All right, fine. I'm sorry, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate that. We good?
All right, fine. You take the day off. I'll sort this video. All right, okay. You have a nice day off. All right, I'll see you later. Bye. Guess it's just me. Hi guys, my name is Josh and welcome to the Pickle Jar. Today, I'm going to take you through the process of painting a miniature. Now, I already did a beginner's guide telling you how to use different paints, how to use different techniques and things like that, and how I generally go about from building all the way up to a finished model as a beginner's thing. As like, if you have never done it before, look at this. Today I'm talking more about the thought process that goes behind painting a miniature, and more specifically my thought process. One of the things that interests me the most about miniature painting is the fact that there's so many people that do it and no two people have the same process. Everyone does things slightly differently, they'll have slightly different ways of applying the base coat, they'll do things in a different order and things like that, and it really interests me. And I like talking to people about how they make those decisions and about how they go about deciding which bits to paint first and what order to do things in and what paint to use and all that sort of stuff. So I thought I'd do a video today talking through my process while I paint up one of the new models from Games Workshop. This is one of the new Gloomspite Gits models, and it was absolutely fantastic to paint. Massive thank you to Games Workshop for sending this out. It's really cool. So the first thing that I tend to do when I'm starting work on a brand new project is to clean my palette. I know that sounds quite basic and self-explanatory, but the amount of times that I've gone to paint something and I've just sort of had paint everywhere, all over my desk, bottles of paint from a previous project, and my palette's not been clean. I like to start with a clean desk and a clean workspace. So I clean my palette out, I fill it with water, add a new piece of paper, clean my desk off, and so I can just get the paints down that I need to get down. I think that if I have a sort of tidy-ish desk, it tidies up my thought process a little bit more and allows me to sort of focus on what I'm doing rather than getting distracted with bits and pieces of stuff that are on my desk and like little models that I might have not finished yet and things like that. In terms of painting, I then start with the base coats. I tend to try and get base coats on the entire model before I move on to doing anything else. Now, sometimes this differs and sometimes I will base coat and then highlight and wash and do everything to one particular part of the model before I move on to doing a different part, and it kind of depends on the model. For something like this, it's a small one-off model and it's not like I'm batch painting or anything like that, so I decided to get all the base coats on together and then move on from there. For the base coats themselves, I tend to like using Pro Acryl because the paints cover absolutely fantastically. It's over black, over white, whatever colour you're using them on, which means that I don't have to mess about doing 2, 3, 4 layers of each paint before it's covered. So that you can see here, I'm watering down the sort of blue to give that nice coverage, and it runs off the brush really nicely. I tend to water it down on the palette without adding too much extra water, just the natural watering down that the wet palette will give, and that really helps it flow that little bit better. For stuff like this, I like to get all the base coats down as well because you can see the colours working together. So like the blacky blue of the cloak, I knew that that would be like, it's quite a cold colour, as is the green for the goblin skin, and that would contrast quite nicely against the red. So I wanted to see how much of the green skin I wanted to put in, or whether I was going to paint his hands as gloves or something like that, depending on how much I thought it could take. Now, at this point, I should probably say as well, I don't actually base coat the entire model. There are little bits that I will leave, and that's because I have a process for how I paint those things. So first and foremost is the teeth on the squig. I have a way that I like to paint teeth. Now, this is only a quick tabletop paint job, so they're not going to be super detailed, but I will still follow the same general principles that I like to follow when I'm painting like orc teeth and squig teeth and things like that, which is its own process, and I like to do it all in one go rather than putting a base coat on and then painting in loads of other stuff and then coming back to that to do the next highlight. I like to do that all in one go. Once all the base coats are on, I start adding washes. Now, I don't like to use too many washes, but for things like this, again, because it's a tabletop standard paint job, I wanted to use a couple of different washes just to make my job a little bit easier. The first one is not actually a wash, it is the black speed paint from Army Painter, thinned down a little bit and then applied as a wash over the entirety of the blue that we've already put down. What this will do is darken that blue down in the recesses and then leave the highlighted areas, that little blue or a tinted version of that blue. It's one of my favourite ways to paint sort of like a blacky blue cloaks, is to paint it blue and then put the black wash or black speed paint or contrast paint or whatever you use over the top, because it's more interesting than just black. Again, if you watched my beginners video, I did something very similar with the ring wraith that I was painting on that. In terms of the way that I paint, I like to work from the inside out. So I will paint the sort of more recessed parts, the deepest areas first, and then work my way outwards from the model, from the inside to the outer areas of the model. Just because you're not then reaching past things that you've painted to paint other things. It makes it a little bit easier. It's not quite as awkward to get to all those recessed areas. So I tend to work that way around. So I'll paint all the inside bits, all the hard to get to bits, I'll make sure there's paint on those and then work my way out. And then as you're highlighting as well, that gets even easier because you're painting less and less and less each time and still just working way outwards so that it's easier to do. For the teeth themselves, as I mentioned earlier, I do like to do these as a separate thing. I tend to base them in a sort of mid-brown and then sort of work my way from that brown up to a sort of ivory colour, blending between the two, and very, very scratchy highlights and stuff as well to add like detail onto the teeth. A lot of times this is kind of sculpted on to like tusks and teeth, especially on like orcs and goblins and things like that and squigs. So I like to paint that in, and if it's not sculpted on, then I like to add it in myself because I think it looks cool. It's one of my favourite ways to paint teeth like this. The entire process of painting this model didn't actually take me that long. It was fairly straightforward. There's a little bit of drying time with the washes that I put on, but it was a fairly easy paint job to achieve and minimal back and forth. Still some with highlights and things like that and going back in to fix things, but minimal back and forth. When I'm painting tabletop standard miniatures, I don't tend to go too hard with stuff. I like nice, bright, contrasting colours. So we've got the red on this, contrasted with the sort of the dark blue, and then the green on the base. Works quite nicely. I wanted the metallics to stand out a little bit more, so they tend to be a little bit brighter than perhaps I would do on other things. I tend to go for quite dark metallics. So these are quite bright because, again, they contrast quite nicely against that dark blue cloak. And that's the main thing that I tend to aim for with my painting, especially for armies and tabletop standard stuff, is that you don't need to do a massively impressive paint job. If you pick the right combination of colours, those models will look fantastic on the table regardless of the execution of painting. The colour choice, adding that red and blue, they contrast nicely against each other and it stands out on the table. And then painting in brighter colours, which is kind of what I do anyway, also adds to that and just amplifies it tenfold. This is the end result of the painting job that I've done on this little goblin model, and I'm pretty happy with it. Is this going to be the start of a new army for me? Probably not. I've got enough to be working on at the moment, and as I said in my last video, I'm not planning on doing any new armies this year. But this has been fun to work on as a little bit of a palette cleanser before the next big project. So it's always fun to do that sort of stuff. I hope you guys have learned a few things, and like I said, this has not been so much of a technical video on how to wet blend or how to do non-metallic metal or how to edge highlight or anything like that. This is more about the sort of process on how I go about painting something, how I approach painting a miniature. Maybe it's something to think about the next time you're painting a new miniature, or maybe you can have a chat about it with your friends the next time you're all having a bit of a get together. I find it really interesting that everyone paints in a slightly different way, and sometimes you'll pick up some new tips and some new ways of painting that might make your life that little bit easier. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, leave a like and a comment down below, and if you're brand new, hit the subscribe button. If you want to help support the channel, there are a few different ways you can do so. The first and foremost is to join our Patreon. That's linked down below in the description, and if you join that, you'll get access to loads of cool perks and extra behind the scenes stuff. Massive thank you to all our current Patreon members. You guys are absolutely awesome. Other than that, we've got all our affiliate links down below in the description if you want to pick up any new hobby products and give us a little bit of a kickback at the same time. It doesn't cost you anything extra, so it's a fantastic way to support us. That's going to do it from me. I'll catch you in the next one, and until then, enjoy your hobby.